Life is bleak in North Korea, with few having access to enough food, diseases like tuberculosis ravaging communities, and the ever-present risk of being sent to a brutal labor camp. People aren't even allowed to leave North Korea. Those who try put their entire family at risk. The country's only redeeming factor is how sexy their leader is. But Kim Jong's sex appeal isn't enough to stop people wanting to leave. Here are 10 daring escapes from North Korea. In 1978, North Korea did something mental. Kim Jong Un was not yet dictator. He spent his time watching and producing movies. His goal was to produce hit films that push North Korean propaganda internationally. So the North Koreans kidnapped a famous South Korean film director and his actress wife to help Kim Jong Un achieve this. They produced several films for North Korea, including a terrible Godzilla ripoff. Unlike Godzilla, this monster was a strong supporter of socialism. At least I think. The movie was kind of hard to follow. Being Kim Jong-il's prisoners was no fun, and they planned on escaping. They were forced to claim they went to North Korea willingly. To prove otherwise, they recorded conversations with Kim Jong-il. After years of producing his terrible films, he trusted them to take a trip to Vienna, where they immediately applied for asylum in the US Embassy. This was in 1986, 8 years after their abduction. One man was so desperate to escape he faked his own death. It's a perfect plan when you think about it. If authorities think he's dead, no one will go looking for him and his family would not be killed for his escape, although he is now telling his story to major newspapers, so I'm not sure what his family could have done to deserve that. He was a hotel manager who used his contacts with foreigners to import Chinese goods and sell them on the black markets within North Korea. He soon became incredibly wealthy, but wealthy people are not entirely safe under the North Korean regime. When his associates began mysteriously disappearing, he thought he might be next. So to avoid the same fate, he pulled the ultimate life hack, faking his death. Using his black market connections, he acquired a fake death certificate citing a car crash. He then crossed the Chinese border and sought asylum in the South Korean embassy. Like I said, he left his wife and children behind. I have a quote from him regarding this. "If a party finds out that I'm alive and that I'm in South Korea, my relatives will be in big trouble." Now with that in mind, I'll tell you what his new job in South Korea is. He's a radio broadcaster. He became a well-known radio personality. The man's a maniac. In 1968, North Korea tried to kill the president of South Korea. At the time, South Korea was ruled by dictator Park Chung-hee. A team of 31 North Korean special forces was sent to Seoul, cutting through the border fence at night. They were to conduct a raid on the president's home, but just 100 meters from it, a police chief stopped them. He didn't trust the group reaching for his gun, but they shot him and a huge gunfight broke out between them and police. There were 92 casualties on the South Korean side, and only 2 of the northern soldiers survived. One fled back to North Korea, but the other was captured. Kim Shin-jo was found hiding in a nearby home after the shooting died down. For over a year, he was kept prisoner but released after agreeing to defect. When he defected, his entire family were executed in North Korea. One of the most daring escapes from North Korea was recently caught on video. He was a North Korean soldier who, on taking control of a military jeep, just made a run for the border. With multiple obstacles, the jeep crashes into a ditch, so he gets out and makes a break for it on foot. Border guards immediately open fire on him as he jumps through the border to South Korea. Hours later, South Korean guards pull him to safety under the cover of night. He was shot multiple times and one North Korean guard accidentally followed him across the border. In 1953, a Soviet jet landed in a South Korean airbase. It landed on the wrong side of the runway, almost crashing into another jet. This was his second stroke of luck, as a Soviet craft landing on the right side of the runway would have gotten him noticed and probably shot down. His first stroke of luck was that the radar system in South Korea was down for repairs that day. A North Korean soldier stepped out of the jet and surrendered. He defected to the United States, where he worked as an engineer. In return for defecting with an aircraft, he was awarded $100,000, which in today's money is closer to $1 million. His best friend was executed for the defection, but another one of his former friends is now considered North Korea's second most powerful man. One defector escaped from South Korea into North Korea. After initially escaping North Korea, she became something of a celebrity in the South, appearing on some of South Korea's most popular TV shows. But last year she disappeared until a video was released by North Korean state media showing her clearly. In the video, she said she felt physical and emotional pain while in the South, and that she was forced to lie about North Korea. She claimed to swim across the North Korean-Chinese border, escaping back to freedom. But of course, people are saying she was blatantly abducted and forced to lie for propaganda. That's probably what happened. But what if she's telling the truth? What if South Korea is really an evil regime, and North Korea is truly a land of love, freedom, and unicorns? Hyun-seo Lee was a teenager when she escaped from North Korea, but she had no intention to do so. A friend of hers was a Korean border guard who helped her enter China. She only intended to stay for a short while. It was her dream to explore China, but just temporarily. But worried about punishment for leaving, she chose not to return, instead living in China for 10 years. She posed as a Chinese citizen even under interrogation by local authorities. Then after 10 years of lying low, she flew to South Korea for asylum, but was forced to return to China after hearing that her family was sent to a camp. So she arranged for her family to be taken to China, where she met them. She led them 2,000 miles to the border of Laos, as it would be easier to leave China from there. She then left for a Chinese airport, but on her journey there learned that her family had been caught at the border. So she followed them to Laos, where police were detaining them, and found out she could buy their freedom by paying enough bribes. But after a while of bribing, she ran out of money and could bribe no longer. Luckily, a passing Australian man gave her the money she needed, and her family were free at last. Kim Jong Un escaped from North Korea 3 times. As a child, his mother smuggled him to China on a fishing boat, but they were found by Chinese authorities within months and sent back. With his mother now imprisoned, he took another opportunity to escape. It was now winter, and the same river he crossed before was frozen over. He crossed the frozen river with ease, but was immediately captured by Chinese border guards. They took him back into North Korea and drove away, but Korean authorities were not yet there to collect him, so he ran back across the river. This time he hailed a taxi before guards could spot him. He then made the long journey to South Korea. One of the more popular options is to cross into China, and with the help of a smuggler network make your way to South Korea. If Chinese authorities find North Korean defectors, they send them back. But one man escaped through China without the help of any network. At age 14, his brother smuggled him to China, where they lived until Chinese police arrested and sent them back to North Korea, where he was worked almost to death. After being released, he took a train to the Chinese border, but train security caught him on the journey. They locked him in a small room until reaching the next stop, but at the next stop he jumped out of the window and caught another train to the border. At the border he swam across a river to reach China, only just escaping border guards shooting at him. He was in China. He walked and hitchhiked for days to reach his father's house. But his father was not happy to see him. He was beaten and scolded until his stepmother decided to smuggle him to safety. They eventually reached a South Korean embassy. This one might not have even happened, so bear with me. Allegedly, there was a secret international operation to bring North Korean scientists to the West. It's known as Operation Weasel. Here's how Operation Weasel is alleged to have worked. Nauru is a tiny island country in the Pacific. In return for US foreign aid, its government agreed to help smuggle North Koreans out of China through their embassy in China. The operation was specifically aimed at North Korean nuclear scientists, who would be taken through Nauru to the US and New Zealand, 2 countries that deny the existence of Operation Weasel. But it's thought several of the high-ranking scientists to defect in recent years were part of the operation.
Arriving in San Francisco, North Korean pilot No Kum-sok, who last September received $100,000 for piloting a Russian MiG jet fighter to U.S. territory, reveals that more Russians than Koreans flew for the Red Forces. He'll return to South Korea after a year of study in the U.S.